All right, welcome back to Impact for TEW. We are in the second week of September. We are a couple shows away from Victory Road. I have the numbers up in the news. I'm just gonna start right away, get into it. I usually say, or at least when I usually say, this might be a short show. It ends up not being so, but this week there really was not much news at all. Kind of had to scrape for it. Some things happened, but nothing really mind-blowingly important. But yeah, probably blow through the news and hope, well, maybe not blow through the show, but we got two episodes of Impact before Victory Road, so let's just get to it. The numbers: BTI TV rating 0.01 as always. Overall rating was a 30, down from a 32. Impact TV had no change at all. TV rating was 30.33 like last week, and overall rating was 45 like last week. So we stayed the same. Like I mentioned last week, our 0.33 rating is the highest TV rating we've gotten with Impact so far. Uh, 45 rating is likely up there for overall. I want to say probably top 10, but likely not top 5. And then attendance was 323, up from 322. So we literally had one person different from last week or the week before. And then uh, BTI was a little less than the previous. So yeah, no real change. Holding steady. If ever we have been. Um, So yeah, hopefully we can either keep this going or go upward. We shall see. Impact news. Maria Kanellis has announced her retirement effective in 3 months. I just looked to make sure, but she is still considered a wrestler, even though we don't use her as such. So I don't expect her to like fully retire. She will probably still at least I think she's wrestler, manager, and personality, so I would imagine she would at least be a personality, if not a manager, or vice versa. So no real danger in losing her. Yeah, if she's just gonna retire from wrestling, that's really no big deal. We'll probably still continue to use her as we have been. Jake Something and Falaba have extended their handshake deals, and also Rosemary, our Knockouts champion, has been hired by AIW on a handshake deal. So AIW really beefing up their women's roster, which is good to see. American news for WWE: Sami Zayn won the 24/7 title on Raw by defeating Matt Riddle and Jinder Mahal, his first reign with that title. Natalia and T-Bar have left the company, probably due to contract non-renewals. I don't really have interest in either one of them. Natalia probably could be an asset to our women's division, but there's plenty of other people I would like to sign before then. Before Natalia, T-Bar, I signed Mace. Mostly as a way to just get Matt Striker off of commentary and replace him. T-Bar, like unless I brought in Keith Lee as well and just had those Dijak and Keith Lee matches going on, I don't really see uh, Dijak having a spot. At least not right now. The things could always change, but in the immediate future, I don't uh, intend on bringing either one in. Shinsuke Nakamura and Tamina have extended their exclusive deals, so Tamina stays, Natalia goes. It's kind of unfortunate. Andre Chase suffered a torn groin muscle on NXT. He will be out for 2 months. For Defy Wrestling, Jeff Hardy defeated Keith Lee and Lance Archer to win the world title, his first reign with that title. Former WWE ref Jason Ayers, who just got released last week, is now um, on Defy, bouncing back rather quickly, accepting a handshake deal with Defy. And then The company have increased their production values to professional, broadcast quality to hired pro, music to local, and live event experience to small. Um, on the surface looks like they're doing quite well, but they are running like pretty much unopposed in regional battles. If I ever do like an overall video over like the current state of wrestling, they're actually um somewhat low on the totem pole. Uh but they're doing well for themselves. They must have like their own, I guess, little scene carved out for themselves, which is good. Then MLW, EJ and Duca, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, defeated Tajiri to win their world middleweight title, his first reign with that belt. International news: New Japan hired Chris Masters Adonis, um, whatever you want to call him, to an exclusive written deal. Therefore, the NWA has stripped him of the national heavyweight title. He had that belt despite being released by the company in January. So I thought that was kind of weird. Uh, but apparently, all the NWA titles are held by the alliance and not the company itself. So if you look up NWA and you go to look at their titles, as a company, they don't have any. Uh, but if you you have to look at the alliance, the NWA alliance, to see those titles, and that's why Masters has still been national heavyweight champion despite being employed by the company for what 9 months now. Um, New Japan continuing on their trend of hiring like WWE mid carders from the mid thousands. So, uh, yeah, New Japan, a weird state in my game. So, but yeah, whatever. AAA, they had a decent show, I guess, Contista Total 4, where Aerostar defeated Phoenix to win the Latin America title for his first time, and then Joe Leiter defeating Drago to win the World Cruiserweight title, his second reign with that belt. Noah has hired Dookie on a handshake deal. Big Japan, Onryo has defeated El Lindemann to win the junior heavyweight title, his first reign with that title. Ice Ribbon, I put this in here because so far this has probably been the worst injury I've seen. Um, I'm not familiar with, but she had suffered a broken cranium. Will be out for over a year. I think it ended up being like a year and a month or like a year and a couple weeks. Uh, so that really sucks. Especially after last week, seeing that Shun Skywalker has will be out for like the next 6 months. That was up there in time off that I've been seeing, but over a year is pretty bad. And then miscellaneous Daisuke Sekimoto and Tetsuya Naito have bonded over social media, so uh, that would probably be a cool tag team I'd like to see. But I believe Daisuke is at Big Japan in this game, probably a number of places, and Naito's exclusive to New Japan. Retirements in Hall of Immortals. I told you there's not a lot of news, and as you can see, there's not a lot of retirements either. The only announced retirements are Maria Kanellis and Taka Michinoku. Official ones: Judge Jeff Jones, Dave Meltzer, and Chris Hamrick. Hall of the Immortals inductions: Yuji Nagata, Jeff Jarrett, Christopher Daniels went in twice as himself and as the addiction team of him and Frankie Kazarian. I don't remember them being called the Addiction. I thought they were Bad Influence in TNA, and then they're SCU in uh, AEW. Maybe they were the Addiction on the Indies, but yeah, them as a tag team also went into the Hall of Immortals, and then Dump Matsumoto also inducted. And now we're already at Before the Impact, starting off with the Swingers Palace team of Alex Zane and Zicky Dice defeating Astrolux and Gotita de Plata. Last week, Zane defeated Commander in a singles match, and now, this is continuing that streak, I guess, if you will, that, initial success of bringing Alex Zane into the Swingers Palace. So they get a win as a team over two more people in the Team AAA contingent. Afterwards, we basically get a celebration with Zane and Dice and Swinger when the group of Falaba, Raj Singh, and Shara all come out. Um, they don't attack them. They mostly just kind of either come out to the ring or come out to the stage and just kind of taunt them. Um, Gets a rather low rating. But that goes to backstage where Willie Mack is running towards like the gorilla position, getting ready to go out to the ring. Last week he had tried to attack uh Fala and Singh and Shara. I really need to get a new name or a name for that group. Um, Looked like he was going to do the same thing again, but he is stopped in his tracks by Crazy Steve. Does not necessarily offer him a place in his alliance, but kind of talks sense into him despite being crazy, if you will. Steve is like, what are you planning on doing? And Willie Mack's like, I plan on beating their asses. And he's like, Steve's just like, well, did that work for you out for you last week? It's 3-on-1. It's gonna be 3-on-1 again. Even if I did go out there and try to help you, it would be 3-on-2. You know, maybe you should calm down and think, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. But so maybe you should like calm yourself down and try not to go charging headfirst into these sort of situations. So that works for tonight. We shall see if that works in the future. Diener cuts a promo on himself, basically lamenting the fact that he was not able to defeat Zhao Zia in the for the digital media title, and kind of ranting about the fact that he tried to show, you know, Masha Slamovich the way of violence, and Killer Kelly had to get involved, and everyone seems to be against him, and he'll find somebody in time. He'll continue his search of someone who shares in his penchant for violence, if you will. And then we get a match, Rep 419 defeating the boys, Dalton Castle's boys. A really good match for before the impact. But basically telling the story that the boys are fairly uh they had gotten beaten down last week on Impact. Rep 419 had been beaten down by the Gospel of Violence a couple weeks ago, but they're at least a little bit fresher, so they were able to eke out the win. But yeah, I think I might have had this agented by Saban or somebody to get that rating. Otherwise, it probably would have been somewhat low. Uh, the first match actually doing fairly well too. So overall rating of 36. Actually, match wise, probably the best episode of Before the Impact we've done. But yeah, we'll see if we can carry that momentum with Impact. All right, so we're starting off Impact with Danhausen versus Chris Bay. Chris Bay being accompanied by Will Hobbs, and that shows quite throughout the match as Will Hobbs gets a few shots in on Danhausen. Danhausen having to deal with the double teaming of Calvin and Hobbs in his own words, but in the end, Danhausen does not get the job done. It's Chris Bay getting the win. I don't remember this being by submission, but regardless, Chris Bay getting the win over Danhausen with plenty of help from Will Hobbs at ringside. Segment rating of 45, so we're starting to show off pretty good. Bay with a performance of 49. Danhausen 36. We're advancing the X Division storyline, and also after the match, we get basically Bay and Hobbs going for a double team, continuing the attack after the match, but they are interrupted when Swerve comes out with the X Division title and a microphone. And, that's enough for Danhausen to sneak out and save his own ass. But Swerve cuts a promo. He's talking about how he's actually kind of stoked he's got no problem with Will Hobbs, and he's kind of stoked that he's kind of called him out for an X Division title shot, and that's why during this match he already went back to Gail Kim and D'Lo Brown and made the match official for Victory Road. Swerve versus Will Hobbs for the X Division title. And Swerve says, while I have no problem with you, Hobbs, it's your, little coattail rider, Chris Bay, that you have aligned yourself with that I have a problem with. See, I've already beaten his ass. I've beaten him twice, retained this title twice over him. But you know what? While I was talking to D'Lo and Gail, I thought it was good for me to have a little warm up match. So I also booked a match for me next week, Swerve versus Bay. And Bay's already offended that he's being called a warm up match. Swerve's like, we're gonna have another match. I'm not put this non-title match, so don't think this is gonna be for the title. You already had two shots at it. You're not getting another one. But what I'm gonna tell you is next week, you and me, if you manage to beat me, the match, a Victory Road will go on as planned. Uh, you can hitch your wagon to Will Hobbs and ride his coattails and do, anything at ringside, whatever you want. But if I beat you next week, you're banned from ringside. You know, and Bay is already, steaming mad, but Hobbs kind of reassures him like you can beat him. We'll get through this. We'll figure out a plan. Uh, so yeah, Swerve versus Bay 3, if you will. Uh, not quite a rubber match considering Swerve's beaten him twice, but if Bay is able to squeak out a win next week, um, he can remain at ringside for Hobbs versus Swerve, but if he is beaten next week, he is banned from ringside. So segment rating of 40 for that. And then we get a promo from Joe Hendry. He's kind of like pacing back and forth. He's backstage. He recounts like how last week he had to face Avery Good and VSK, and quite frankly, he lost. And he knows uh, Brian Myers isn't the biggest fan of him. He gets it. But when I came back to, he's talking about, he's like, when I came back to Impact, I wanted to make it a better place. You know, Not only did I want, the Impact faithful to believe in Joe Hendry, I wanted, you know, basically to, have Impact believe in itself or whatever. And that's when I found, I wanted to have people believe in themselves. So that's when I found Nick Stapp out on the, left out in the cold, jobless. And I told him, I'm going to help him get his job back. I'm going to help him believe in himself. But, Myers, you know, you wanted to have the power. You wanted to, lord it over your lackeys. And, you wanted to have Nick Stapp under your thumb. Well, that's fine. Whatever. You want to do what you want to do. But, I'm going to make sure, I want the people to believe in Joe Hendry and I want the people to believe in themselves. So, what I'm going to do, I'm laying out the challenge. You and me, a rematch at Victory Road. I know we had a match and you came out on top last time. That's fine. But what I'm going to do is if I win, um, I'm going to get Nick Stapp his job back and he doesn't have to work for you anymore. And, I'm going to help him get back on his feet. But if you beat me, I'll go back to Scotland. I think he's from Scotland. I'll go back home and you won't see me in Impact ever again. So, you can have that feather in your cap if you're able to beat me again. But, I'm bound and determined to, make Impact believe in Joe Hendry and make Impact give a crap about Nick Stapp and, trying to hype up the people, but laying it out on the line. If he loses at Victory Road, he will leave Impact. Segment rating 26 for that. And then we get a promo. Gia Miller interviewing Rich Swann, Gia Miller talking about how Jordynne Grace and Jonathan Gresham have laid out the challenge for Victory Road. Jordan and Jonathan versus Rich Swann and Sue Young, husband versus wife teams facing off. And Swann's like, "Hey, I'm down for whatever. I'm down to do, whatever. But, the thing about me and Sue, is we do our own thing. I'm here by myself. She's off doing her own thing by herself. I don't need to be like Jonathan Gresham and ride the coattails of my wife to be successful. I've been successful in Impact and, we'll do this, but, basically cutting a promo, taunting Jonathan Gresham, um, claiming that Gresham is riding his wife's coattails, much like Chris Bay and Will Hobbs. So there's a theme here, I guess. But segment rank 20, storyline is Lost Heat. I'm pretty sure I had this scripted, so penalized for them not following a script, but I don't remember them not being scripted. So I wonder if that's a glitch. I know I've had issues where I go to book something, I have it script, and then I go back in and the script is not checked, so I don't know what's going on. I also, but that could be my fault too. I also do have to update. They've been asking for an update for the last couple weeks, so I do have to update my version. Maybe that's fixed. I don't know. But unfortunately, promo not doing that great because uh, they went off script, and I did not plan for that to happen. And kind of following that match, we had Roxy versus Su Yung. Su Yung winning, not necessarily due to any sort of creepy shenanigans that Su Yung has been doing as of late, but the fact that Tasha Steelz ran in and basically cost Roxy the match. So Su Yung getting the pin uh, with some unintended help from Tasha Steele, sorry. Segment rating of 32, a fairly solid match, I guess, between the two. But that leads into a post-match brawl where basically we have Tasha attacking Roxy. That brings out like Savannah Evans and Janai Kai. When that brings out Rachel Ellering and Willow Nightingale. That brings out Mercedes Martinez. That brings out Quinn McKay. That just dissolves or devolves into a big brawl between the two groups. Segment rating of 23 for that, losing heat for the storyline. So um, we might have to wrap this one up fairly soon. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah. And then we go backstage. Jordynne Grace, having watched the match about, with Su Yung and kind of probably likely having heard Rich Swann's comments about her husband, when the Knockouts champion Rosemary comes to talk to her. And Rosemary's like, we appreciate your help in the recent weeks, and um, in return, I know you have another match with Su Yung at Victory Road. You weren't able to defeat her last month at Emergence, I believe. Um, but we are willing to help you out in defeating Su Yung because we know you're not well versed in the other realms as we are. And Jordan's like, I get what you're saying and I appreciate it, but you know, unlike you and unlike Sue, I live here in the real world. And I intend to beat her ass here in the real world with real wrestling and not any of this, shenanigans. And Rosemary's just like, fair enough. But, before you leave, just let me know. I'm just letting you know there might come a time where you have to beat her and you have to face her in her realm. And you'll have to think beyond the ring and all that. And Jordan's like, okay, whatever you say. And just kind of walks off. So we have Rosemary and Jordynne Grace having a loose friendship, if you will. Rosemary helping out Jordynne Grace, with the otherworldliness of Su Yung, but Jordynne, ever so the realist, not quite accepting it, but we'll see how that goes out at Victory Road. Husband and wife teams tagging, facing off. Segment rating of 32 for that. And we get a promo from Colby Carino, still in his neck brace, still claiming Homicide taking liberties of him, and he admits last week his plan, getting the giant Hikuleo on his side, didn't quite work out. He thought Hikuleo would be big enough and strong enough to deal with things on his own, but that wasn't the case. And he's basically threatening, trust me, Homicide, you'll get yours, and I'll make sure that, and I'll have a big surprise for you next week. So he's teasing something for next week. We don't know what that is, but we'll find out. Segment rating of 33. We get Morrissey versus Steve Macklin. Not quite a match. Morrissey is off his game. That's probably to be expected. But less of a match and more of an angle because due to when the match was made last week, it was heavily implied by Maria Kanellis that Morrissey take the dive, let Macklin win. There are times where Macklin tells Morrissey to get down. Um, Basically, they're stalling. Morrissey's stalling. He's thinking about it. He's thinking about should he just lay down and take the pin, lay down for Macklin. It takes a few minutes until finally he goes to lay down. Macklin goes for the cover. Morrissey kicks out. So Macklin's pissed. They start fighting, but eventually Black Taurus and Matthew Raywalt run in, attack Morrissey. Morrissey wins by DQ through the interference. So basically turns into a 3-on-1 for Morrissey. Not willing to lay down for Macklin. Um, Again, leading towards the. Actually, should we turn him face here? It's been building for 8 segments. We should just do it now. He's at chilly momentum because he keeps losing his own. So hopefully this will. We're not screwing him over. Okay, turn was a success. So now, technically, Morrissey now officially a babyface due to not laying down for the likes of Steve Macklin, but in the end that doesn't work out for him because he's attacked by Black Taurus and Matthew Raywalt in the end. Wins, albeit by DQ. Segment rating of 33. Then we go backstage where we see D'Lo Brown and he's approached by Dalton Castle. And Dalton takes exception to being beaten by Michael Bennett last week. Not so much maybe beaten by him, but the way that Michael Bennett cheated to get the win. So Castle challenges Bennett to a rematch. Wants a rematch with Bennett, asking D'Lo Brown. D'Lo Brown's down with it. He's like, that sounds like a good match to me for pay-per-view. I'm ready to sign it. And eventually Michael Bennett comes in, lays out Dalton Castle, pushes him into the wall, beats him down. D'Lo goes to call for security, but is blocked by Maria and Matt Striker and Robert Evans. Striker and Evans literally grabbing D'Lo Brown and holding him back and holding him by the mouth so he can't call for security. Maria telling D'Lo that Michael just needs to work some things out, while Michael Bennett basically stomps Dalton Castle into the ground. No boys to be seen. They have been beaten. Well, not necessarily beaten, but likely still tired from their before the Impact match and their beat down from last week. So we have Maria Kanellis' group beating down Dalton Castle, beating the B team, beating down W. Morrissey in the ring. So they are, quite in control over their respective situations. Segment rating of 34 for that. We get a promo from Eric Young and Damien O'Connor. They're hyping up tonight's main event. main event with them and teaming with Lance Archer versus Jake Something, Heath, and Rhino. Um, they talk about how 2 weeks ago, when it was time to determine a number one contender for the world title, and they saw it was Jake Something and Lance Archer in a match to determine the new number one contender. It was them that decided that Jake Something was not the one to break on through to the next level, and that's what they're here for. That's what Eric Young claims to be. He claims to be the gatekeeper, and anybody who is, wants to be somebody in Impact, anyone who reaches that next level has to go through him, and they've decided that Jake Something is not that guy. He's not going to be a number one contender or world champion anytime soon, and they decided that they put their backing on Lance Archer. They interfered on his behalf. Lance Archer going on to Victory Road for the world title, and they're teaming with him tonight. And they're going to prove once again that Jake Something is not that guy. He will not be um, reaching that next level anytime soon. So a segment rating of 34 for that. All right, so we come back to a 6 knockout tag team match. The Knockouts champ Rosemary and the Inspiration versus Tennille Dashwood and the Knockouts tag team champions of the BFFs. And in the end, it's the face team, excuse me, the face team getting a win when Cassie of the Inspiration gets the pin over Chelsea Green with a fast roll up. Not necessarily fast count. So basically, Chelsea getting somewhat distracted, uh, not able to kick out in time. So we get the former champs having a win over the current champs. But the real story here is apparently that Tennille Dashwood sustained a dislocated shoulder. So we shall see how that works out for Victory Road. Tennille has the title shot against Rosemary at Victory Road. So we'll find out how bad that is for her. But for the match, segment rating of 37, Deonna Purrazzo head and shoulders above everyone else at a 50, and then Rosemary at a 40, and then everyone else in the 30s with Chelsea at a 28. So Deonna, wondering if we should break her out on her own, but as far as I know, as far as I have planned ahead, that's not necessarily in the cards. But we'll find out how Tennille's doing. Um, with her title match, is that going to be up in the air now that she's injured? Plans might change. We'll find out. Thank you, Gail. And then we get a promo from Viper. She talks about how she laid out the challenge to Rosemary one more time for the Knockouts title. She made a false count anywhere match, a match she thought she could win, but she failed, and that's on her, and she's willing to admit it. And she's willing to admit that Rosemary came out the better woman and, still is Knockouts champion. But what she doesn't want to do is crawl away and hide. And what she wants to do is fight head on and fight anyone. She wants a fight at Victory Road. She's laying out an open challenge. She is willing to fight anyone, and she'll be back here next week to accept the challenge of who she's laying down the challenge. Anyone who wants to accept, face her in the ring next week. They'll have a match at Victory Road, and she wants to make sure that basically she still has what it takes to be on the Impact roster and consider herself the toughest knockout. So segment rating of 36 for that. Viper laying out the open challenge for Victory Road. We go backstage where Gail Kim is talking to Mike Bailey, or rather Mike Bailey's talking to Gail Kim listening. Bailey talking about how uh, he just doesn't like how Ace Austin has been walking around with that Feaster fired briefcase. He's got the title shot briefcase for the world title, and he's been circling. It's like Austin has been circling his friend Josh Alexander like a hawk, so Bailey's been doing the same to him, and he just doesn't like how Austin's been a thorn in their side. So he's basically been a thorn in his. And Gail's like, I know you don't like it, but there's nothing really I can do about it. Ace Austin won the briefcase. He can cash it in anytime he wants, and that's basically by design. So I know you don't like it. And Bailey's like, and I know I don't like it. And it's like, if I wish he would cash it in the right way. I wish he would, announce a time and a place for the title, and so I don't have to keep watching him and making sure he doesn't try to stab my friend in the back. And he's like, well, if I had that briefcase, I would be, you know I would do it the right way. I would announce when and where I was cashing that in. And Bailey's just kind of like, you know what, I have an idea. And Bailey, then Gail's like, well, I'm willing to hear about it. And Bailey and Gail Kim just kind of walk off, so we don't get to hear what Mike Bailey's idea is, but something that we'll likely find out in the weeks to come. Segment rating 37 for that. And then we get a singles match, but a preview of the tag team titles match at Victory Road. One half of each team, Davey Richards versus PCO. I have this as a wild brawl, but PCO winning, beating Davey Richards in a wild brawl. Segment rating of 49. Richards having an in-ring performance of 60, but PCO only a 29. So, but basically, two men beating the crap out of each other. What wrestling is all about in the end. PCO having that edge, I guess, over Davey with the gospel, his newfound power, if you will, in the gospel of violence. So PCO overpowering Davey for the win. Segment rating of 49. And then after the match, basically, we have Brody King coming out, joining PCO, Father Bateman likely hanging out as well, going to do a 2-on-1 beatdown on Davey when Eddie runs out and evens things up for the save. Again, preview of their match at Victory Road. Segment rating of 41. Father Bateman helping King out during the segment. So Father Bateman's doing a fairly good job as a manager. While this is happening, the Morrissey machine guns are backstage watching this all happen on a monitor, basically seeing the Wolves and the Gospel of Violence just beat each other to, you know, just beat each other senseless. And that's basically what the guns say. They're like, they're beating each other senseless. They're both stupid. Like, they have the match at Victory Road. They have a title match, and what's going to be left of them by the time Victory Road rolls around. It's stupid. They should just be like us and just kind of bide your time, sit back, hang back. Opportunity will come in, and once we get that opportunity, eventually we'll be the fresher men, we'll be the better men. And they're talking about this. Eventually, LAX comes in to interrupt them, and they're just kind of like, "Hey, what happened to you guys? Like, you've just been acting like spoiled brats lately." I know I don't have them like turned full on heel, but do have them acting kind of heelish, as in they're hanging back instead of getting involved as wrestlers should. And basically, Homicide and Hernandez are echoing that sentiment, and they're like, well, you know what? We're not going to let this stand. We're challenging you guys to a match next week on Impact. I know we don't have anything for Victory Road. As far as I know, you guys aren't booked for Victory Road. So why don't we give the fans a match for Impact next week? Two legendary teams in Impact history, LAX versus the Guns one more time. And the Guns are actually kind of down for it. They're just kind of like, well, all right, let's do it. So, maybe the Guns aren't as cowardly, at least, as they have been acting these last couple of weeks, but, maybe they are down for a match. They just don't get why the Wolves and the Gospel of Violence are willing to beat themselves into bloody pulps. So, LAX versus the Guns next week on Impact, segment rating of 40. We get a promo for Ace Austin and Man Fulton, mostly Ace, just talking about, he's like, Mike Bailey, you've been thorn in my side late, like the last couple weeks. I know you don't like me having this world title shot, but I don't care, and while I have this title shot, I'm going to be circling your boy Alexander like a hawk. And, you can attack me all you want, but you can't take this briefcase from me. What all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. Sooner or later, I'm going to be cashing in this title shot. I'm going to be Impact World Champion. There's nothing like you or Josh or anybody can do about it. So basically, just maintaining that Austin has the title shot briefcase, intends on using it, but Bailey's been cutting him off at any chance. So segment rating of 33. Storyline advancing but losing heat, unfortunately. But in our main event, we get the 6-man tag. Lance Archer, Eric Young, and Damien O'Connor as the Hold. I don't really like that name, but I couldn't come up with something better. Defeating Jake Something, Slater, and Rhino. Eric Young cheating to pin Jake Something, so his proclamation earlier in the show came true. He wanted to make sure Jake Something did not ascend to that next level, and he was able to do so. Cheating, but winning nonetheless. Uh, Lance Archer with a 53, Damien O'Connor 49, Rhino 43, Jake 42, Heath 36, Eric 30. Jake seeming off his game, but Jake, still at a 42, so fairly decent. But yeah, Eric Young getting the win uh, over Jake Something. Underhanded tactics, nevertheless, getting the win. Segment rating of 40. But as the heels celebrate, Lance Archer, you know, is out. I don't really foresee them doing like a post match beatdown, but Lance Archer's kind of gloating, like he's next in line for the belt. He makes the belt motion. That draws out Josh Alexander, the Impact World Champion. So Lance Archer and Josh Alexander getting into another stare down, uh, sending home the fact that, that's our title match at Victory Road. That ends up bringing out Ace Austin and Madman Fulton, who go to attack Josh Alexander with the briefcase, which in turn brings out Mike Bailey. So we just get a big brawl to end the show. Nothing of note. Austin not really able to cash in his title shot once again, thanks to Mike Bailey. But Alexander and Archer for the world title still intact. For Victory Road, segment rating of 33. An overall of 41, which I believe is a dip. I think 45 was what we've been getting the last couple weeks. Lost popularity in 2 regions, but increased in 34. So we had Chris Bay at a 45, or Chris Bay and Danhausen at a 45, PCO versus Davey at a 49. So yeah, PCO and Davey segment of the night. Uh, yeah, fairly. I don't want to say below average. 41 still decent for what we get, but it is a dip from last week. So, but we are setting up more things for Victory Road, more matches. We get Swerve versus Hobbs finalized for Victory Road for the X Division title, but next week we have Swerve versus Bay 3. If Swerve wins, then Bay is banned from ringside, but if Bay wins, then he can remain. Uh, Joe Hendry versus Brian Myers. If Hendry loses, he will leave Impact. We have the mixed tag of Swan and Su Young versus Jonathan Gresham and Jordynne Grace. We have, well, we might have Rosemary versus Tennille for the Knockouts title. With Tennille being injured, that might be up in the air. Uh, Michael Bennett versus Dalton Castle, but with the attack on Dalton Castle, we shall see if that match holds for Victory Road. Viper has an open challenge for Victory Road. We have the knockout or the tag team titles of the Wolves versus Gospel of Violence. We have the title match, Josh Alexander versus Lance Archer at Victory Road. We have Morrissey Machine Guns versus LAX next week. So yeah, things coming together. We have one more show till Victory Road, so join me then. Until then, thanks for watching.